procrastination. It is one of the most frustrating things that keeps us from really getting where we want to go. So, how do you stop it? And also, how do you stop it when you're your own boss? In fact, that's one of the biggest concerns I hear from newbie freelancers is they're worried that they don't have somebody holding them accountable. And so the question becomes, how are you going to hold yourself accountable? And how are you going to take that next step in the face of procrastination? I have so many tips for this, my friend, because I have had to deal with procrastination in so many ways. And it's really funny because there's lots of different ways it rears its ugly head, and some are much more sneaky than others. But the first thing to understand is that procrastination is actually an emotional experience. It's not because you're weak or have poor willpower or just can't muster up the courage to do something. Procrastination is a sign of something going on just under the surface. And so the question becomes, can we figure out what that is? Because oftentimes there is a theme. There's a theme running through your life that gets kicked up and makes it harder for you to do something. And so if you can really work to identify the themes in your life through mindset work and self-awareness practices, you can have a huge advantage in tackling procrastination when it pops up in your life, because it's gonna pop up. You can't get rid of it altogether, but it can be something that you're happy to dance with, or at least not dreading, instead of letting it be the thing that blocks you from moving forward. By the way, I'm Sarah Turner. I'm a freelance copywriter and copywriting mentor. I've been a freelancer for over 9 years, and I have worked with almost 4,000 freelance copywriters in a really intimate way. I'm their mentor and I help lead them through these processes. And so these tips are not just from my own experience, but from working hands-on with other freelancers like yourself. So let's dig in. First things first, it's so important to understand that procrastination often comes from emotional mindsets, but also from stories we tell ourselves. More often than not, it's fear. Fear is popping up, and it's often because you're about to embark on something new that you've never done before. And the unknown is always scary because our brains are predictor machines that want to know what's coming up. It's how we move through the world feeling safe. It's how we move through the world kind of categorizing things, putting them into different patterns, and knowing, okay, here's what to expect, and here's how to navigate the situation. And this is true for me. Anytime I implement something new in my business, which is often, I am hit with a wall of procrastination. But I've come to recognize it as a sign of growth. So one thing that really helps is to not beat yourself up. So just don't even beat yourself up about it. When you feel procrastination kind of creeping up or growing, acknowledge it and say, okay, procrastination is here. I'm noticing I don't really want to sit down and do this thing. And that is a sign that I'm growing. Because when you frame it in a positive light, which it absolutely is, it's just a sign of growth most of the time, then you can know that it is a good thing. And you can remind yourself that you know you're going to be able to overcome it because you've overcome it before. Sometimes I will say procrastination can also be a sign that you're about to do some sort of work or embark on something that isn't quite in alignment with your values. So those are the two questions I want you to ask yourself. Is it fear, or is it because it's not in alignment with my values? Simply identifying these two causes, and there can be other causes for sure, but these are the two main ones. But simply identifying these two main causes are huge in taking that next right step. Because if it's fear, you can often say, okay, I know what this feels like. I know it's because I'm starting to do something new, and it makes a ton of sense. And one of my best tricks for dealing with fear-based procrastination is to simply set a timer, to acknowledge that it's simply fear, that you've been here before, that you're gonna overcome it. And then I set a timer for like 30 minutes to work on that thing, because more often than not, it's just about getting started, right? So I'll set a timer for 30 minutes. I'll remind myself I can do anything for 30 minutes. I'm gonna look at this new scary thing that I'm procrastinating, and that's it. It's just gonna be 30 minutes. More often than not, by the end of that 30 minutes, I've overcome the little bit of fear that was preventing me from getting started, and I'm really willing to keep going. Sometimes, though, you get to that 30 minutes and it was an absolute grind, and that's okay. Put it down and come back for another 30 minutes tomorrow. I am telling you, you can go so far when you just chip away at something 30 minutes a day. It's one of my favorite hacks. Now, if you ask those questions and you think to yourself, wow, this is actually because it's not in alignment with my values, that's a whole different story. Sometimes when you're procrastinating, it's because something that you're working on kind of feels icky, quite frankly. This happened to me when I was first starting out as a freelancer. I was feeling really needy, desperate for money. I was in a ton of debt. I was freaking out. And so I took on clients that, quite frankly, I didn't believe in their products or services. But I'll take it one step further. One of them in particular, I actually thought was causing harm. And so it makes sense. I sat down to write for them and I just couldn't do it. And when I identified that my procrastination was because I was writing for somebody from a place of scarcity and because it was not in alignment with my values, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wrote to that client and I said, hey, I'm really sorry, but I actually cannot write for you. I actually went and told them exactly what it was. I said, you actually have a product that touches home in a way because it was something that caused my sister harm. And so I can't in good faith actually write this copy. Now, I didn't really need to tell him all those personal details. In fact, you can totally just say, I am so sorry. Once I assessed what you actually needed from me, I realized that I do not have the bandwidth to deliver the type of quality of work that I hold myself accountable to. I'm going to give you a few recommendations of places you can go to work on this project. Now, keep in mind, just because they don't align with your values doesn't mean that they won't align with someone else. So I do want to encourage you to leave the situation with grace. You don't need to tell them that they're a horrible person, and you definitely don't need to tell them exactly why. So that's one of my favorite ways to kind of moonwalk my way out of a sticky client situation, and then use it to inform your decisions in the future, right? You don't need to work with those people in the future, and I promise once you start refining your business as a freelancer, you're going to feel more confident just saying no right out the gate, and that's a big, big win. So now let's talk about procrastination in disguise. This is one of my favorite subjects because I see it happen so often. One of my favorites is perfectionism. Perfectionism is simply procrastination in disguise. And when you think about it, there's always an emotional underlying story or fear or concern that fuels these things. More often than not, procrastination is actually a fear of being embarrassed or looking like a fraud or not looking like you don't know what you're talking about. It's usually rooted in some core belief, and it's usually something that is easier to handle when you identify that core belief. So if you are a perfectionist, ask yourself, what is perfectionism protecting you from? And how can you work to embrace being imperfect? I am telling you that done is better than perfect. It is so important to keep moving forward and to not let perfectionism make you crazy. As a former perfectionist myself, I can tell you it's much better on the other side, and it is definitely worth pushing back on. Another story I often hear people say to kind of justify their procrastination is, I work better under pressure. This might be true, but are you really creating your best work under pressure? Maybe. I will say though, in the practice of mindset work and personal development, I realized that I really liked being in what's called a high beta state, which is a really stressful state for your mind. But it's the kind of state where you feel like you're really getting shit done, you feel like you're super focused, but it really revs up all the systems in your body because you're essentially in kind of like a fight or flight situation, which is really hard and taxing on the body. So as I incorporated mindset work into my life and decided that I really wanted to work on being more comfortable in ease, which was kind of a hard thing for me to do at first. I really did love the feel of the adrenaline that I got from being under pressure. So it was an actual active choice that I wanted to be more comfortable in a state of ease because I knew it was better for my body and my mind. So if you think that you work best under pressure, I want to encourage you to kind of push back on that because ultimately it is better for your biology. And I know that it feels like you make really good calls under that revved up state, but there is so much science showing that you actually are so much more clear-minded when you are not in that high beta state. So the science shows that it's better to be calm, but I do know that when you maybe grew up in a state of like emergency or high stress or high beta or high energy type A, that's kind of the personality that we associate with this, what might need to happen is that you actually make a choice to choose a calmer way of dealing with things and to bring more ease into your life simply because you know it's better for you. Another form of procrastination that cracks me up and I see often is overconsumption. Overconsumption is a fancy form of procrastination. And it's easy to justify, right? You're like, I need to gather all this information before I make a move. That seems really noble and virtuous, even, because you're like, I'm doing all this research to make sure I do it just right. And I mean, it can go hand in hand with perfectionism, and so often it does. But the thing is overconsumption is just protecting you from the same fears. So ask yourself, am I using overconsumption as a procrastination technique so that I don't ultimately have to move forward? And if you are, what can you implement in your life, and what stories can you even work to rewrite, or your beliefs that you can work to rewrite, so that this isn't something that's preventing you from really reaching the levels of success that you want for yourself? Another form of procrastination that I see is kind of like checking in with gurus, making sure that you have tons of reassurance from coaches or mentors, and making sure that you have that pat on the back before you actually take action. This comes from a lack of self-trust. And I want you to really think about, what can you do in your life to grow your sense of self-trust so that you don't need reassurance from so many other people. One of the best ways you can grow your sense of self-trust is to make little promises to yourself and then to keep them. Maybe that's reading for 10 minutes every day. Maybe that's making a promise that you're going to take action without checking in with somebody, and then doing it, and then really realizing and calling out that you have done that successfully. Building self-trust is one of the best things you can do for yourself as an entrepreneur. Another form of procrastination that I often see is buying so many tools because those are the things that make you feel like you're being productive. And then you end up really getting into the nitty gritty of all these productivity tools and highlighting things and making them color coded. And then you've created so much admin work for yourself, but it feels really good. That's another form of procrastination, my friend. And it's one of those things that I really try to push back on. I like to make sure I have some of the most simple systems and procedures in place. And I ask myself often, am I using tools in a smart way, or am I using them just to kind of feel productive and like I'm kind of like a boss and I'm an entrepreneur? And it's just one of those fancy ways that we often procrastinate or make things take longer than necessary. Another form of procrastination is waiting for inspiration or the right mood. Listen, this is one of my least favorite forms of procrastination and that I am hardcore pushing back on. It's absolutely bullshit. If you are always waiting for inspiration or the right mood to do your work, you are going to be making life so much harder for yourself. And not only that, when you sit down and actually crank out your work from a place of like not a ton of inspiration, that's when you rely on your skill. And that's an important practice to have, because you need to be able to rely on your skill when inspiration isn't there. And also, more often than not, you got to get started first for the inspiration to come. This is one of the forms of procrastination that fires me up the most because I think it hurts so many people. This idea that you need to be like doing your work from some lofty mountaintop in white robes. I joke about this actually with my best friend often, because this is her favorite form of procrastination, is to make sure that she's in the right mindset every time. But I am telling you, as she has started showing up, and I do this too, in the places where it doesn't always feel the best or perfect or right, inspiration actually comes after the fact. So think about all the inspiration you might be missing out on by not just getting started. So I want to leave you with a few tips. Confidence takes practice. Courage gets you over that hump. So you just need a little bit of courage to push back on your procrastination, whatever it looks like. And if you keep showing up and doing the work and practicing and getting better all the time, you will grow that confidence and that self-trust. And these are huge. The other tip I want to give you is please give yourself room to do things imperfectly and awkwardly. I cannot tell you the number of times I've implemented something new in my business and it was awkward as hell. It is okay. That is where things start. Babies start walking awkwardly, clumsily. They look like little drunk humans, right? Before they're actually walking. That is the only way to start. And if you are waiting to perfect something before you start, you're gonna be waiting a long time, my friend, because it's the awkwardness that you gotta get comfortable with and push through to grow really fast. I really want to encourage you to work on mindset work because it's one of the biggest game changers in my life. And I don't really want to pitch this, but I do have a mini course called Master Your Mindset that's on just this. So if you're interested, you can definitely check it out, but that's not the point here. Whatever you can do to start working on your mindset, bringing awareness in, is going to be so huge for you as a freelancer. I also really want to encourage you to get an accountability buddy. Being a freelancer alone is so rough. It's so rough, and we get in our own head. We don't have other people to bounce ideas off of, and it can make us literally crazy. So find somebody who is on the same journey as you, please. I have done both, and I'm telling you that the second one, having a friend in entrepreneurship, is far better. So go ahead and reach out, even if it's awkward, even if it's uncomfortable. Find somebody you resonate with and say, hey, would you like to be accountability buddies and just check in on each other about our businesses from time to time? I'm willing to bet that they're looking for the same thing. So hang in there. Procrastination is a doozy, but there are so many things that you can implement in your life so it has far less control over you. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you like this, and don't forget to subscribe. It means so much to me. And of course, please leave comments if you have any thoughts, considerations, or even tricks of your own that you really enjoy or have really worked for you. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.